Martin Parr's photographs made critics furious and working class audiences cheer. Same images, completely opposite reactions. So was he a cruel satirist, mocking ordinary people, or one of the most democratic humanists in photography history? At a time when every serious photographer worked in black and white, Parr shot in colors so saturated they looked artificial. He used macro lenses to get uncomfortably close. His ring flash created this flat, surreal lighting that made even the most ordinary beach day feel like it was happening on another planet. When the work was exhibited in London, critics were outraged. They accused him of exploiting the working class, of being a snob looking down on ordinary people. But something strange happened when these same photographs were shown in Liverpool. The actual working class communities he'd photographed came to see the exhibition, and they didn't see exploitation at all. They saw themselves, and they wanted to buy the prints. So here's the question: how did the photographer accused of mocking ordinary people become one of the most influential documentarians of our time and president of the world's most prestigious photo agency? Martin Parr grew up in the most ordinary place imaginable, suburban Epsom in the 1960s. Middle class, unremarkable. The kind of place most photographers would dream of escaping to document somewhere more authentic, somewhere with more obvious drama or poverty or beauty. But Parr had something most photographers never find: absolute certainty. At 13, after watching his grandfather George develop prints in a makeshift darkroom, Parr knew he would be a photographer. Not that he wanted to be one, he knew he would be one. He later described it as total conviction, an obsession that never wavered. By 1970, he'd made it to Manchester Polytechnic to study photography. His classmates included Daniel Meadows and Brian Griffin, all part of what would become known as the Young British Photographers movement. They were documenting protests, urban decay, the grittiness of working class life, all in black and white, which was the only way serious photographers worked back then. But 19-year-old Parr was drawn to something else. He's gone to visit a friend's brother at Prestwich Mental Hospital in northwest England. Just a social call, but when he got there, he became fascinated by the place. His lecturers at the Polytechnic told him it wasn't appropriate subject matter. They discouraged him from continuing, but he ignored them. For 3 months, Parr immersed himself in documenting the hospital. The photographs that came out of it were beautiful in a haunting way. Poetic, humanist, very much in a tradition of classic documentary photography. Years later, he'd say this was the moment his photography really took off, when he learned to trust his own instincts over what he was being taught. To pay his bills during this period, Parr worked at Butlins holiday camps as a photographer. It seemed like just a job, the kind of thing you do when you're young and you need money. But something happened there that would change the entire trajectory of his career. He found the work of John Hinder, a photographer who made postcards of holiday camps in these wildly exaggerated colors. So bright and saturated, they looked almost psychedelic. Most serious photographers dismissed Hinder's work as commercial garbage, the kind of thing that had nothing to do with art. But Parr couldn't stop thinking about those postcards.
I moved to Hebden Bridge along with 3 to 4 other colleagues from Manchester Polytechnic, and we set up a workshop there. So it was a painter, a ceramicist, an architect, and we got this shop premises on Albert Street, and we created the Albert Street Workshop, and I was there for 5 years. I got very attracted to and interested in these small Methodist chapels that were up on the hills above Hebden Bridge, and over a period of years documented these very carefully and very thoroughly. And these, in a sense, captured this whole idea of the traditional aspect of working class life that was quickly disappearing in that part of Yorkshire, or indeed anywhere. And I went there to very much celebrate these sort of institutions in their dying days.
In 1975, he moved to Hebden Bridge in West Yorkshire and co-founded something called the Albert Street Workshop. Part darkroom, part gallery. a community space for photographers. For the next 12 years, he worked on a project called The Nonconformists, documenting the region's Methodist and Baptist chapels. These were institutions that were quietly closing down as traditional working-class communities fragmented and declined. It was lonely work, shot entirely in black and white.
One of the fundamental flaws in photography is that given the option, photographers will choose photo opportunities, the visual and the exotic, the carnival, the circus, or serious worthy subjects like mental hospitals and the homeless. My response has been to try and create photographs which depict daily life.
Parr was still working completely within the accepted boundaries of serious art photography, black and white film. He was good at it, but he wasn't yet doing anything that would make him famous or controversial. Then, in the early 1980s, he discovered two American photographers who would change everything: William Eggleston and Stephen Shaw. They were doing something that was still considered almost radical. They were shooting in color and insisting it could be serious art. Parr later said, "They gave me confidence to know that color can be serious too." That confidence led him to make a decision that would define the rest of his career. He bought a Makina Plowbell 67 medium format camera, attached a ring flash to it, loaded it with the most saturated color film he could find, and pointed it at the British seaside. What came out was nothing like anyone had seen before.
I also realized how photographers had neglected to document the ordinary. As a result, I went to the dullest places I could think of: car parks, motorway service stations, etc.
Between 1983 and 1985, Parr spent his time at New Brighton, a working-class seaside resort that had seen better days. The place was in decline, the facilities were worn down, but people still came. Families still packed the beach on sunny days, still bought fish and chips, and still tried to have a good time despite everything. Parr photographed all of it with his new technique. The ring flash created this flat, almost cynical light that eliminated all shadows. Combined with the saturated film stock, it made everything look hyperreal. Flesh took on this artificial quality. Food looked grotesque up close. Trash became as visually prominent as people. He was using a macro lens too, getting uncomfortably close to his subjects, putting them under what he later called the microscope. The resulting book, The Last Resort, didn't look like any documentary photography that had come before. There was no romantic distance, no attempt to make poverty look noble or dignified, but there was also no obvious contempt. The photographs showed people as they were, sunburnt, eating, laughing, surrounded by litter and decay, trying to enjoy themselves at a beach resort that was falling apart. When the Serpentine Gallery in London exhibited the work in 1986, the critical response was vicious. Reviewers accused Parr of exploiting the working class, of being a middle-class photographer looking down on ordinary people for cheap laughs. The debate got heated enough that it made national news. Was this important social documentation, or was it just snobbery dressed up as art? But then something interesting happened. The same exhibition travelled to Liverpool, and the actual working class communities that Parr had photographed came to see it. They didn't see exploitation, they saw themselves, not prettified or romanticized, but real. They wanted to buy the prints.
When this exhibition was shown in Merseyside, people said, "That's what it's really like." Down south, I was criticised for being voyeuristic and lacking in compassion. I maintain that all photographers use their subjects. The end justifies the means. And I had succeeded in highlighting wider issues like how the fabric of the nation is breaking down.
Photographer Elaine Constantine later pointed out that maybe the snobbery wasn't in Parr's photographs at all. Maybe it was in the way middle-class critics assumed working-class people needed to be protected from honest documentation of their own lives. Parr's response to the controversy was to keep going. The Cost of Living, which he shot between 1987 and 1989, turned his lens on Thatcher's new wealthy middle class, Same technique, but now he was photographing country club members, yacht owners, people at expensive social events. The argument that he was punching down became harder to sustain when he was clearly punching in every direction.
I'm middle class and have actually prospered under Mrs. Thatcher. This makes me feel slightly guilty, and surely this unease is a more revealing thing to explore than the usual trick of showing wealth and poverty together as a way of making social comment.
Then came Small World, a project that took him across the globe from 1987 to 1994, documenting mass tourism. He photographed Americans at the Leaning Tower of Pisa, Japanese tourists at European landmarks, the homogenization of culture through Western consumption patterns. It was satirical, sure, but it was also deeply researched anthropology, showing how globalization was flattening cultural differences into a series of identical photo opportunities. By the mid-1990s, he developed what you might call the Martin Parr style, a visual language that was instantly recognizable. Common Sense, shot between 1995 and 1999, pushed his macro lens technique to extremes, rendering everyday consumer goods as grotesque still lives. A hamburger became almost nauseating up close. Shopping became an absurdist ritual. But again, he wasn't editorializing in a traditional sense. He was just showing what was there, amplified. His technical approach never changed from that initial breakthrough. He used the Makina Plowball 67 with a ring flash for the last resort, then moved on to a Nikon with a 60mm macro lens and SB29 ring flash for his later work, eventually switching to a Canon 5D digital camera. People often assumed he was manipulating the colors in Photoshop, but Parr was adamant about this. The saturation came entirely from his choice of film stock and the way the ring flash interacted with daylight. No digital manipulation. What you saw was what the film captured. By 1994, Parr had become one of Britain's most successful and controversial photographers. But there was one thing missing: institutional legitimacy. And there was only one institution that really mattered in documentary photography: Magnum Photos. Magnum wasn't just a photo agency. It was founded in 1947 by Henri Cartier-Bresson and Robert Capa as a cooperative for the world's greatest documentary photographers. And then there was Martin Parr, whose work looked like it belonged in an advertising portfolio, whose colors were commercial, whose gaze seemed to offer no solidarity at all.
I'm told I'm the most controversial new member they've ever taken on, that there was a lot of people, a lot of the older members of Magnum took a particular dislike to my work, and it became a very heated debate.
When Parr applied for full membership in 1994, it triggered what members later described as institutional warfare. Philip Jones Griffiths, a legendary war photographer who documented Vietnam, led the opposition. He didn't mince words. He called Parr the spawn of Thatcher and a fascist. The accusation was that Parr's work represented everything wrong with 1980s Britain: commercialized, cynical, lacking empathy for the working class. Henri Cartier-Bresson, the co-founder of Magnum himself, visited one of Parr's exhibitions in 1995, specifically to evaluate his work. His assessment? The work was from another planet, not from the planet where Magnum photographers operated. The debate split Magnum down the middle. This wasn't really about one photographer's admission. It was about what documentary photography should be in the modern world. Should Magnum preserve its humanist tradition, or should it evolve to include work that blurred the lines between art, commerce, and social documentation? Admission required a 2/3 majority vote. When the votes came, Parr fell short by a single vote. It looked like the traditionals had won. But then Bert Glynn, an elderly Magnum member, did something extraordinary. Glynn was bedridden with food poisoning on the day of the vote, too sick to attend. But he asked someone to bring Parr's portfolio to his bedside, who reviewed the work while fighting through illness, then literally dragged himself to the Magnum office to cast his vote in person. That single vote changed the outcome. Parr was admitted to Magnum Photos by the slimmest possible margin. Philip Jones Griffiths never spoke to Parr again. The wound from that battle never fully healed between them. But the decision to admit Parr proved historically decisive. It opened Magnum to a new generation of photographers who worked in color, who blurred documentary and art, who brought commercial techniques into serious photojournalism. The agency transformed, and in 2013, Martin Parr, the photographer who'd barely been admitted 19 years earlier, became president of Magnum Photos. He served until 2017, leading the very institution that had almost rejected him. So was Martin Parr cruel or kind? A snob or a humanist? A key thing to remember, Parr himself never seemed interested in that question. He said part of the role of photography is to exaggerate, and that he was creating fiction out of reality. He also said something that surprises people. I don't want people to be mystified or puzzled by what I'm doing. I want the pictures to be bright and cheerful. Bright and cheerful. Not what most people see in his close-ups of consumer culture. But maybe that's the point. He wasn't telling people how to feel, he was showing them what was there. The accusations of exploitation never fully went away. In 2020, he resigned from the Bristol Photo Festival after controversy over an introduction he'd written for another photographer's book. But here's what else he did. 2017, he donated his entire collection of 12,000 photo books to the Tate Modern. He founded the Martin Parr Foundation in Bristol, a public gallery, educational hub, and supporter of emerging photographers. He spent his final years actively mentoring young documentarians. In 2021, Parr was diagnosed with myeloma, an incurable blood cancer. He underwent stem cell transplants, needed a rollator to walk, but kept photographing. On the 6th of December 2025, he died peacefully at home in Bristol with his family present. He was watching a football match. He was 73. Photographer Elaine Constantine wrote that he clearly loved people, and his work showed realities that were not straightforward ones. It's about reporting rather than creating a beautiful picture. Maybe that's the answer. Parr wasn't cruel or kind in his photography, he was honest. He photographed wealthy people with the same unflinching eye he used for working class families. He didn't romanticize poverty or mock wealth. He just showed what consumer culture looked like up close, in colors so saturated you couldn't look away. That democratic approach, treating everyone's reality as equally worthy of documentation, is what made him brilliant and controversial, because honesty without editorial guidance makes people uncomfortable. His influence is everywhere now, that hyper-saturated, flash-heavy aesthetic in modern documentary work, in how we think about photograph in everyday life. Much of that traces back to New Brighton in 1985. The Martin Parr Foundation continues supporting emerging photographers. His Magnum admission opened doors for countless others working outside traditional photojournalism. But here's the question his work leaves us with. In a world where everyone has a camera, where we're constantly documenting our lives and posting images of our food and vacations, what did Martin Parr understand about how we see ourselves that we're only now beginning to recognize? He understood that we don't need photographers to make our lives look beautiful or meaningful. We need photographers to show us what our lives actually look like. Funny, grotesque, joyful, absurd, and utterly human, all at once, without an apology. Maybe that's why the working class audiences in Liverpool loved The Last Resort, while critics in London hated it. The people in the photographs recognized themselves, not as they wished to be seen, but as they actually were, and they found that recognition more dignifying than any romanticization could ever be. Martin Parr spent 50 years holding up a mirror to consumer society. The mirror was so bright and so close it made everyone uncomfortable. But he never looked away, and because he didn't, neither can we.